Love Life has always had a connection to its fanbase since the very beginning. While it's still common now to see some polls for certain ideas such as for subunits, it was much more back then. Polls were everywhere, for your favorite character, favorite song, and it would actually influence huge parts of Love Life history, such as with certain singles and art pieces. It was very common for a song's center to be determined via polls. I mean, if the fanbase wants to see a certain character, then the song should focus on them, right? That can't cause any problems. From subunit names to determining who gets to collab with certain companies, Love Life depends on the fanbase to make a lot of decisions. I mean, if you don't appeal to them, then they aren't going to buy your stuff, and that can lead to certain topics that's not really relevant to this video. But I believe Love Life took a huge risk with its relationship with its fanbase when they announced Perfect Dream Project for SIF's 4th anniversary, which in turn would create the group Nijigasaki. Nijigasaki has a very complicated history from its debut to its eventual rise, and I believe a large part of that stems from how different it was and how much of an underdog it was in this series for a while. And even though it wasn't directly confirmed like in the article, I am of the strong belief that if it wasn't for the fans, Nijigasaki wouldn't be where it is today. The anime, the movie, all of it was dependent on the fans on a level much deeper than other groups. Very bold statement, but I want to go through Nijigasaki's bizarre history and connect to the fanbase starting from the beginning all the way to the anime and the movies. So before Nijigasaki was a thing, it started with a secret poll for the Japanese version of SIF, where the end girls were ranked. End girls are the most common character you get in a gacha poll, and they are alright. Not to say they're bad in any way, I love a ton of their designs, and one of them has the same day as my birthday. Anyway, the top 3 ranked in the poll would actually be added as characters for a new Love Life SIF based project, known as Perfect Dream Project. And if you aren't aware, these characters were Shizuku, Kanata, and Emma. Along with them being chosen, they all got slight touch-ups to fit the Love Life style. PDP was shrouded in a lot of mystery during its start, but as you can tell, even from the beginning, it was heavily affected by the fanbase by determining what characters get to become a part of it. To my knowledge, this is the first and only time they've done something like this. Other groups would already have the characters be created for it, but leaving it up to us to choose who would get in was a unique aspect, and it showed that this project was going to be different. Now, for the record, PDP and Nijigasaki are 2 different things. PDP refers to the codename project for SIF's anniversary, which will become All-Stars, while Nijigasaki is just a school group the cast is in. They're primarily associated with PDP because they were basically intertwined for the beginning of its life until All-Stars actually got announced. It's essential to point out that Nijigasaki wasn't made for Love Life in specific, it was made for PDP, which was for SIF. And here's a little interesting fact about All-Stars development and a little bit of a theory of mine regarding Nijigasaki's history. While its development history is cluttered, and we'll get into that later, some pieces of evidence lead to PDP being originally more of an add-on to SIF rather than the whole new game/sequel, since All-Stars is considered a sequel to SIF. Shouts to Twitter user Deep Sarah for bringing this to my attention, but going through old Twitter threads led me to SIF originally planned to have full 3D CG animation for their songs with this key illustration here. And if you played All-Stars, that was the main appeal to it, the 3D animations. Perfect Dream Project was already a thing at this time, and with how vague they were of the actual goal of PDP, it was most likely because there weren't any solid plans. Going off of Deep Sarah's words along with Reddit posts discussing the planned 3D feature for SIF, it's pretty clear it was going to be way too powerful for SIF, which is why they possibly needed to create a whole new app for the 3D animations, which could possibly explain why PDP was shrouded in so much mystery for a while. They weren't sure if this ambitious plan could actually work and need to essentially bide their time for results. The only reason why I bring this up is because if the original plans actually went through and PDP's whole thing was just a 3D add-on in a new group, I think Nijigasaki's presence would have been lessened way more and actually become a side project, only staying in SIF's territory. Nijigasaki's history is wild, but is also very long, and I believe it's both because of that length and the fact they got a whole app dedicated to them that it's gone to the state it is now, so I consider it a little happy accident. But ignoring that crackpot theory, when I think about Nijigasaki, there are 2 major things I remember when it was in its early stages. 1, the placement, and 2, the variety. Nijigasaki was in a unique situation where it was the next group announced, but not the next major group at the time. Aqua was already alive for a couple of years, and having 2 groups active was intriguing because from what we experienced, only one group can exist at a time. So already, the goals and priorities are shifting with Nijigasaki and this PDP. This is before the anime, before anything else, so we're seeing this new direction being taken place while Aqua is still in the main spotlight. This is the reason many consider Nijigasaki a side project at the time. And going to my second point where I brought up variety, what would you do if you had a really popular franchise in your hand, and you have another project that isn't exactly in the spotlight and won't give you that much of a loss in the long run? Me personally, I just fuck around. That sums up Nijigasaki in its early stages, messing around, or experimentation. Sure, it had the usual popularity polls and subunit names, but they did so much of showcasing the group. Nothing was exactly defined yet, and comparing it to other groups, it felt more personal in a sense. Like they were on a pedestal but kept falling down to our level, so it was both kind of sad, but we also got close to them as a result. One of the biggest goals you have to achieve when starting a new group is to get us attached to these characters. Like, why should we care about them? Before an anime gets released, how are we as the audience supposed to know them? When Love Life first started appearing on Dengeki, they had short stories showcasing the characters. While simple, these consistent news updates kept people interested while the actual content was being created. The same was done with Aqua, but Aqua had a bit more of a head start since it didn't need to spend time building up its energy blast, since Love Life was already extremely popular, so they could spend more time doing shit instead of building shit, if you know what I mean. With Nijigasaki, it was different. Firstly, when all the characters were revealed, they did a weird way of advertising them. And I wasn't here for this. I literally joined right when the stuff all ended, so I'm using the power of research for this. The 9 girls that were created for PDP were split into free teams that would get their own content on free different apps. And these apps were used to promote these characters in all stores, which was still being teased around this time. Remember what I said about experimentation? There's more. Now, each of these apps were filled with comics revolving around the free girls, and the conversations they all got themselves into, along with occasional streams. It was a really unique way to advertise their characters, and each of the art styles for the comics was different from each other, making it sort of a treat to read them. You got more connected to characters on a closer level since subconsciously you were choosing which girls you want to get to know more. But while it was fun to read them, you couldn't help but wonder, so what's the end goal here? I'm reading these comics and I enjoy them and the characters, but what's it all going to lead up to? This perfect dream project is already going directions that we aren't used to, and it's pretty clear some fans are confused or concerned because it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. It was already small scale compared to the other groups, so what was up? Unfortunately, I wasn't there when all this was dropping down, but you know who was? These people! In preparation for this video, I went full journalist Noodle mode and decided to interview my friends who were there when Niji was beginning to bloom. Some of them have been around since the Muse days, so their opinions were especially important for this video. So, thank you, Prim. From the interviews I've done, there seem to be 2 sides regarding Nijigasaki. Those who were immediately devoted to the characters in the story, while some were more skeptical, given the increasing grudge of new groups being added. It wasn't even that long that Aqua debuted that Nijigasaki was added to the group, so it made some people hesitant to join in. One of the people I interviewed, Hoshino, who made idol stories, so she definitely knows her stuff, gave me a really good rundown of what the climate was like during this time. There were 2 major points that potentially gave Nijigasaki the status it was in at the time, and that was the coverage and the translations, or lack thereof. Hoshino brought up the fact that Aqua and Muse had a lot more coverage, especially globally with conventions and cosplayers. Now I personally can attest to the globally part, because even now Nijigasaki isn't exactly the most popular here. But regarding the coverage, while I couldn't find any direct sources on that being true, researching the Dengeki magazines, which Love Life has primarily used to advertise its group in the beginning with Muse, there are almost no signs of Nijigasaki in the years of 2017 to 2019, so it's not that far-fetched to say that claim is true. Although Dengeki is obviously not the only magazine Love Life publishes on, so if anyone has any pages that disprove what I'm saying, feel free to let me know. Future Noodle here, so this isn't entirely right, thanks to Mimo for giving me more information on this, but there actually was some big coverage on Nijigasaki during this time. Along with the sub-unit name polls I mentioned very briefly, they also showcased many of the characters' solo songs over the years to maintain intrigue. Since the entire group was based on solo idols, the way they advertised each of them made them unique in individuals rather than as a group itself. There was also another thing that kept Niji in the spotlight and made the Nijigasaki cast more individualized and separate from each other, and I don't really mean that in the best way. I'm not talking about the popularity polls, I'm talking about the punishment polls. Remember this offhand comment I made at the beginning of the video? I mean, if you don't appeal to them, then they aren't going to buy your stuff, and that can lead to certain topics that's not really relevant to this video. Well, now it is relevant to the video. I'm slightly jumping ahead here timeline-wise, but it should still be mentioned because of how much it impacted Nijigasaki. In 2019, Love Life would do monthly punishment drawings for Niji, where the character who got the least amount of votes would be drawn in a revealing outfit. I don't need to explain what's wrong with this, but it definitely kept coverage of Nijigasaki around during the year 2019. This didn't go unnoticed, by the way. There were discussions, there was even a petition telling Love Life to cut that shit out, and luckily they did stop after 2019. Love Life has never strayed away from of their characters to appeal to people, especially early Love Life, but as time went by, the need to do so decreased, so seeing it pop back up in 2019 as sort of a last-ditch effort to get more people into Nijigasaki definitely wasn't the best look. Fortunately, after the whole fiasco, Love Life would continue doing polls for Nijigasaki, but these weren't popularity or punishment polls. Instead, fans were given a prompt and allowed to vote which girls would fit the prompt the most. For example, who would be more likely to be an angel/devil, and the 2 top voted would be drawn in illustration together. It was a nice move that used the same idea of polls, but twisting it to be something everyone can enjoy. It's created a ton of illustrations that I personally love as well. But that's all from Future Noodle, let's get back to the present. Translations were also a really big part of Niji's coverage, and I'm gonna be focusing on it globally because, yeah, we exist too. Nijigasaki was heavily carried by passionate fans translating all media of it, and I mean that in such an important way because remember how I said they advertise themselves? It wasn't exactly the most comprehensible way for the most part, and you'd be stupid as hell for thinking they give us official English translations. Quoting Hoshino on this, Muse already had a solid ground since it was around for years before disbanding, and Aqua had the benefit of SIF integrating them into the Love Life group seamlessly along with the anime. Nijigasaki? Well, you already know. The way it advertised itself created a bridge you decide yourself if you want to join in with Nijigasaki. I don't want to say Love Life wasn't putting care into advertising Nijigasaki, but I don't think they tried hard enough or didn't think it was worth it. Like with Aqua and Muse, they had the door open and they were like, yo, come in guys! And with Niji, the door is open, but it was like, yeah, come in if you want. Oh, you gotta make a few jumps. We haven't filled some of the holes in yet. Hoshino stated it best when she told me this. People's enjoyment really tends on how much effort they want to put into being involved and the necessity that is the community. Because without the community, there wouldn't have been translations for Famitsu and whatnot. And I think that quote from her paints a good picture on how being a Nijigasaki fan was like back then. You chose to be one, of your own accord. With Aqua Muse, fuck, you were probably seeing them everywhere, so you probably just gave in. But with Nijigasaki, you deliberately had to decide, yeah, I'm gonna get invested in this series. And if anyone here is a Hasuna Sora fan, you probably understand the statement Hoshino just said, especially regarding the popularity of Hasuna Sora recently. There was one beam of hope though for Niji. All the promotion was made for one project. All-Stars, the mobile game that was made specifically for them. Luckily, it would be releasing in 2018, just 1 year after PDP was announced, meaning they would have some ground to stand on. Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, the game was delayed to 2019 for quality control due to the new use of 3D models and wanted to touch on certain things. You starting to believe that crackpot theory of mine? What this did, however, was leave a wide gap of time where Nijigasaki had to essentially, almost everyone agrees that the All-Stars delay hit really hard for Niji's popularity. I've had multiple people attest to that, with one going a bit further, detailing the small rise it got when Tokimeki Run was released, but went back down until All-Stars released. Hopefully by listening to me say this, you understand the really bad position the Nijigasaki group was in. The one thing that could have made the Nijigasaki door go, yo, coming guys, was delayed, and it made more holes as a result. This would lead to the comics and streams being one of the only main sources to compensate for the lack of content. They weren't even getting Dengeki illustrations, that was all relegated to Aqua, so this was the only content we were getting. If you actually read all the 4 Coma comics of all the girls, you realize when they start going batshit insane because they do not know what they're doing anymore. It's both funny and also incredibly sad due to the circumstances. Everything seems rough / not going anywhere, and character personalities aren't even finalized. And I know for past groups that was also the case before the anime made canonical personalities, but here's a lot more insane. Okay, so this is the only chance I get to talk about this, but Ayumu in the 4 Coma comics is actually insane. She's a far cry from what she would become both in All-Stars and the anime. She's on Demon Time every panel and exudes an aura that I don't think any other Love Live character has reached both past and present. Every day I wish that they kept this version of her, and it's something that's part of Nijigasaki history. Hashtag bring back EvilMu. These comics would serve as primarily the only food that Nijigasaki fans would eat, and it still developed a pretty hefty fan base. No anime, no All-Stars, just straight ass. I'm joking. Despite that though, it created a sense of being grounded, like it was on our level. Binge reading all of these and taking into account the time period it was in, it feels indie? Like this wasn't created by a multimedia millionaire company, it feels like a fun passion project that the artists were clearly having fun with. I say they go and stand the comics, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. When you give artists creative freedom, it shows, and oh my god, it shows. It gives us such a personal feel to every comic, and even when the comics combined due to the free apps discontinuing, creating Nijion, it still had a home feel vibe. It wasn't filled with plot, but just a slice of life, and I can imagine those that read it when it was coming out felt that even though there wasn't actually plot happening, just seeing the characters interact made it more than enough. This is a really weird comparison, but the transition from the personal felt comics to the actual series reminds me a lot of Ruby, with how Volumes 1 to 3 really feels like a small project with the mix match assets of both 3D and 2D drawings along with the homemade feel animations. Starting from Volume 4, things would become more standardized / professional, and for the record, I don't mean that in a bad way, I love Ruby, I just want to make this comparison from going to something tangible to something less tangible, more higher up. Like, look at Tron's old visual effects. Even if you have no concept of animation, it still feels tangible, like you yourself could see how it was done. But you look at Tron Legacy, and suddenly everything about it feels intangible, like you no longer have that personal connection to it. I make these free connections because of one thing. When they transitioned, they lost that personal connection in my opinion. I watched all of Ruby, and while I enjoyed it, it lost that personal connection because of how professional it became, and that's in part probably because of Rooster Teeth. Nijigasaki, however, did not lose that personal connection, and so, let's finally get into the year everything changed. 2019. This was the year shit unironically happened. SIFAS, or All-Stars, were given an actual release date, they had their first 2 lives, All-Stars were finally released, and the biggest one, they got an anime. This is still one of the greatest announcements solely because of the reactions from the cast members. It was said by Akari Hito, who plays Kanata, that when she was signed to Nijigasaki, there wasn't any wordplay on if there was going to be an anime or not. They straight up said no. Now, we could question whether or not the higher-up was actually lying. I personally don't think they were because of the original goal of the project, which was specifically being made for the SIF franchise. I believe that they didn't have intentions of producing an anime for Nijigasaki, but due to the growing fan base, they decided to take a chance with it. My reasons for this are because the decision to make the anime was done before the first live, and also before All-Stars released in Japan, aka the biggest moment where your fan base can grow. I made a Reddit post on the Love Live subreddit asking why the anime was greenlit, and I received a ton of answers from longtime Love Live fans who were there during most of Niji's history. It's there where I learned the exact time the anime announcement was made to the cast, and also the potential reasons why an anime was produced. While there isn't an official answer and many users directly told me so, everyone mostly agrees that was heavily due to the fanbase Niji created over its lifetime. Love Life would have had to take into account the fanbase they've cultivated since starting PvP, and decide whether from there to actually call the green light on the anime. I say this as if it was a decision that didn't have much importance simply because of one reason. Only a few months later, Layla was announced as Hello Love Life at the Love Life Fest, so they already had plans to start the next major group. Going back to the interviews, Mimo had a lot to say about his love for Nijigasaki. One thing he attested to was that it was made clear Niji was not getting an anime, and that the story was going to be told in the future game, that one being All-Stars. Mimo states that they were blinded by Niji's popularity, and with the way they were pushing them in 2019, it seemed like a test to determine whether they were actually worth it or not. Of course, you could just easily say that they wanted to gravitate more attention to Nijigasaki with the announcement of the anime, making it stand to the other groups, which was long overdue, and that makes perfect sense. I won't try to argue with that. I just believe because of Niji's cult status, I want to say, that this was in large part because of the fanbase and not because it was required. My statement of referring to Niji as a cult status doesn't just exist because of how it started, it also exists because of something that shouldn't have made him have a cult status. All-Stars. In order to paint this picture, you need to understand how iconic its predecessor was. School Idol Festival was popular, and not only just popular in the anime space, no, it was everywhere. Non-Love Life fans would play this game, and it was part of the reason why Muse and Aqua was so popular, both in Japan and overseas. Its rhythm layout is iconic, and I can bet if you showed someone a picture of it, they'd be like, oh shit, that's that one rhythm game, Love Life, I used to play on my iPad. That's how iconic it was. You think of Project Sekai when you think of rhythm games nowadays, or D4 DJ, but back then, Love Life had it in its reins. It came out in the perfect time when there weren't that many good rhythm games, and so there wasn't much fierce competition. You'd think that having a sequel to SIF would be an instant success, and that's what it was looking like at first to people who happened to come across the news. Talking about both Mimo and Deep Sarah, All-Stars was exciting. Seeing Muse and Aqua unite and interact with each other along the new group made it so fascinating. That promotional video they made was so hyped that any fan, old or new, would have been excited for it. There was announcements for cross-capability between SIFAS and SIF, and it seemed like it was going to be SIF 2.0 essentially. A sequel to SIF, with 3D models and animation, that seemed like a banger. And then you play the game and then quickly uninstalled it. Okay, so the transition from SIF to All-Stars was brutal in terms of player base, and it was mainly because of the genre shift from a rhythm game to more RPG focused. Leveling up your girls was a thing in both games, but in All-Stars, if you did not actually pay attention to how the game works and formulate your team around the rules of the game, you would die. It was made evidently clear from people who were there that the game was not advertised well gameplay-wise. Everyone expected it to be SIF 2, and why would they think otherwise? SIF had been out for years now and was slowly becoming outdated, so updating what works seemed like a no-brainer? If you didn't know anything about SIF and just played with the worst team ever, you know what you could do if you still knew how rhythm games worked? You could finish the song. You could not pull that off in All-Stars. Either you understood how the game worked, or you didn't. I genuinely don't know what Love Life was on making this. With SIF, it eases you in and gets you addicted. You're able to play their songs peacefully, but you notice your score is kind of bad despite your performance. So you begin learning how the cards work and how it can boost your score, and it becomes a natural progression. All-Star said fuck you and had the biggest entrance door I've seen in a very long time. And that learning curve pushed a ton of people away, once again pushing Nijigasaki to its own circle. A bigger one, no doubt, but again, in the same situation. And it wasn't just a genre shift that screwed All-Stars over. This game was poorly managed from the start of its launch to its tragic end, which isn't important to this video, but all you need to know is certain cards were busted and broke the game, and one thing you do not want to do when maintaining an online free-to-play gacha service game is upset your whales, the people who pour money into your game. I could get a lot more in-depth with what happened since the people I interviewed were really passionate about it, but all you need to know is that All-Stars had issues that didn't exactly have easy solutions too. All this left Nijigasaki as like the bystander constantly catching strays for no reason besides living. And I refer to Nijigasaki as a cult status in a way, and I'm exaggerating that slightly because they still had thousands and thousands of fans. But I can definitely say that compared to the other groups with my research, it wasn't that close at all. Despite all that though, Nijigasaki still had its audience. Both old and new fans that were willing to learn these characters and get attached to them. They may have gone stripped down character-wise for the transition, that's for another video, but the best thing about Nijigasaki fans that I've learned by being one and talking to others is that we're along for the ride no matter what. And during this time, major things were happening in Love Life series that would increase massive appeal to both fans in Japan and overseas. The biggest one being Love Life Fest, where all three groups would unite to perform many of their iconic songs. It wasn't just a way to naturally push Nijigasaki with the other two Love Life groups, but this was global. Love Life Fest was one of the few and only live shows to actually have delayed viewing globally in theaters. This was big for fans outside Japan, and no doubt gathered more attention to Nijigasaki, the newbie of the series so far. You come from Muse and Aqua, and hey, there's this other new group you should go check out. And I actually went to this delayed viewing. I actually recorded even though I wasn't supposed to. Don't kill me, Love Life, please. But this was another step towards globalizing the fanbase of Love Life without alienating them. You had the ones who deliberately chose to jump through hoops to access certain kinds of content like Nijigasaki, but with this event, it honestly felt like Love Life did a proper advertisement for Niji towards casual fans who only knew Muse and Aqua. Continuing from All Stars though, Love Life wouldn't stop experimenting with Nijigasaki, a character that hid their face, a longer form of storytelling, characters with more complex arcs because of said longer runtime, and most famously, new characters. This is the first time Love Life added new characters to an existing group, starting with Shioriko and then Lanzu and Mia later on, and speaking of Mia, shit, yet another case of Love Life experimenting with Nijigasaki but also using it as a way to broaden their reach. Mia Taylor was the first character in the series to be fully fluent in English thanks to Shuichida. This marked a change in how Nijigasaki's fanbase was treated, and I mean that globally. During live streams that were Japanese only for obvious reasons, Shuichida would actually speak to many of the viewers in English. Not only was this cool from a "oh my god, she's talking to me" viewpoint, but it would also make Nijigasaki more special in terms of the fanbase it created compared to previous groups at the time. Starting from when Mia joined, there would be global streams where the cast would attempt to speak English, with Shuichida clearly being in a league of her own. But this was cool, and showed how innovative Nijigasaki was toward its fans, so like a thank you from the series to the audience. And listen, some of you may be thinking that I'm reaching, like no shit that a series and their fan base is connecting in ways, but is it really that deep? And I say, yes. When it comes to a series that, let's be frank for a second, was a side project that wasn't given the most attention, the fan base is going to be the most important part. It's a situation where if no one cares for the project, it just dies and Love Life is like, well, that didn't do well, glad it wasn't our main project. But that wasn't the case. The fans gave support to this underdog series, and it eventually got to the point that Nijigasaki became more than it was most likely going to be. I've been saving this point up in my ass until now, but I finally get to use it like a truth bullet. So let's actually talk about the anime. Now I'm gonna get into the series soon, but I want to start with the creation of it and the behind the scenes. Starting with Yuu Takasaki. There's no way I can mention the anime without talking about her and her connection to the fanbase. Simply put, she's us, or rather our self-insert. You see, when All Stars came out, the character we were in the perspective of was Anata-chan, who was our self-insert. She was us, we were her, yeah. She was actually a character though, with like a personality, so when the anime was announced, Love Life actually decided to make her a fully fledged character, even having a poll to decide her name. Ultimately, Yuu Takasaki won, but this was another big thing for the Niji fanbase. Having a character that was essentially us be in the anime was a big thing, and I remember back then everyone joked about, guys, we're actually in the anime, and we're cute as hell. I don't really see people talking about being Yuu Takasaki for real anymore, and I think that's because Yuu has become an actual character and not a self-insert, and that's nice. But the fact they went above and beyond for this character we didn't even see in the original game showed how much care they have for the series along with the fans who love Anata-chan. And it doesn't stop just there. You know who this is? This is Tomoyuki Kawamura, the director of the Nijigasaki anime series. All the seasons, OVA, movie, that's all him. And he's pretty open about talking about the production of the series. One thing he has made clear though on multiple occasions is that things happen one after another. It isn't exactly planned. In one of his tweets talking about the Nijigasaki anime, he openly stated that when he was making season 2, there wasn't any original plans at all to create a movie, a trilogy at that. He personally thanks the fans for the support and claims it to be the reason they exist. There was also another source who told me that he also said season 2 wasn't planned until after season 1 was finished, but isn't confirmed. But I do believe it since he's so open about it on Twitter. Kawamura is clearly aware of the impact the fans have, and it's here where I can finally talk about the scene that inspired this video. The entire idea of me talking about Nijigasaki and its connection to its fanbase all started from here. In season 2, episode 13, the final episode of the season. It starts off with the Nijigasaki cast being shown a collage of gifts given them by the fans, and take a second to look at it. Just keep looking. Keep looking. Now if you're a Love Life fan, you might realize, hold up, I recognize the artist! In this beautiful scene, the cast of Niji takes some time to look at all the gifts they've gotten, and it's all from real fans. Watching this episode for the first time genuinely made me get goosebumps. People that I follow and have liked their art for a long while getting acknowledgement in Love Life? What the fuck? Now this isn't uncommon. They typically put images of fan works during live streams and such, but to be immortalized in the anime? That's insane, and it really shows a great deal of respect to the fans that have supported Nijigasaki over these past years. It doesn't just end there though. This entire episode/season is a fan service galore to those that have been following the series since it started. I forgot to mention them, but most of the Sif and girls make appearances in this season. It genuinely feels like a love letter to Sif and its history, along with its own since PDP spawned from Sif. From the characters appearing in their first live uniforms to performing existing songs of theirs that had been animated before, it's genuinely magical to have them be fulfilled like this. It's filled with so many blink and you'll miss it moments that casual fans probably won't notice, but longtime fans will, and it will hit you hard. It all comes to this moment though, when Future Parade starts playing. The song is about soaring the skies, with specifically us, but when the visuals start changing, you understand what Nijigasaki thinks of us, the fans. Now remember everything I've been talking about. The rough start, the delay, choosing to be a fan, All-Stars, the globalization, and despite it all, the fans were still there. So what did we get treated with? Nijigasaki treats us, the fans, as part of the series itself. And that isn't anything new for Love Life, but not on this scale. They start showing locations around the world, and also have a plot point later where people outside Japan want to become school idols. And I know how parasocial this sounds, but fuck you, let me have this moment. You know how bizarre it is to get acknowledged in this way? Not just with the art, but a full representation of us across the world that support Nijigasaki. Not in a live stream, not on a live, but in an anime. something that anyone is gonna see casually and is gonna be imprinted onto there forever. I can guarantee all Niji fans lost their shit this episode, and for good reason. It's a culmination of everything Nijigasaki stands for and what it can't stand without. Us, the community. The event that happens in the anime is literally called First Live with You, in reference to Nijagasaki's first live in real life. The one thing I adore about Nijigasaki is that it's consistent with how much it wants to let us know that we're important to the series. Go watch Nijigasaki OVA and skip to the credits, where the entire thing is filled with messages from fans across the world. And they get an entire credit list dedicated to them to show how important they are. Nijigasaki has never forgotten its roots and how the roots were able to grow, aka us. And you think it ends there? No, I still have more evidence. When I say they don't forget their roots, I mean it. For Nijagasaki's 6th live, they made another 4-coma comic and it is just as insane as it used to be. Never in my life did I expect them to bring it back up, since it's such an odd piece of Nijigasaki history. But it doesn't end just there, there's more. You know Nijion Animation, the series based on Nijion, the comic series? Well, Nijion spawned after the free apps Niji was using to advertise itself shut down, so they were forced to combine all the girls into one comic, which became Nijion. While the way it formed was unfortunate, Nijigasaki has embraced Nijion, and giving it a full animated series is sort of a way to thank fans for their support before they were able to get their, shit together. And even today, Nijigasaki is still proud and embraced its past. It also still experiments for some reason, which makes me happy but also very concerned. Ever since the movie was announced, Love Life has just been doing these weekly chapters of Nijigasaki cast just doing shit. It's purely just a random garbled mess made by the talented Twitter user here. The plot is insane. Things just happen. Other Love Life groups just pop in for no reason, Hasnasaur attacked, and there are a million references to the old past of Nijigasaki. Love Life just allows Nijigasaki to do whatever it wants, and honestly, good for them. It's made Nijigasaki the most unique group out of the ones we have right now, besides maybe Hasnasaur. And I believe that to be the best part of Nijigasaki. Nijigasaki has never been like the others, and I love that's embraced that while still paying respects to the fans who have been along for the ride. Going over Niji's inception to how it's being treated now, with 3 whole movies coming out, new singles popping this year, it's hard to believe the state where it's at now. And I love that's never forgotten how to be Nijigasaki. Now, what is Nijigasaki? I don't know, go rewatch this video and figure it out for yourself. This has been a very personal and biased video because Nijigasaki is my favorite group. It grew on me admittedly, and I still don't know which girl is actually my favorite, because, for Muse, I have definitive, it's Umi, Aqua, it's Yo, but for Nijigasaki, I tend to get conflicted with the choice. While I wasn't there for its entire history, researching and doing all this made me appreciate the level I didn't really think was possible. Talking to my friends who have been here for way longer than I have, and seeing how it was like back then, really makes me appreciate the fans of Nijigasaki, for persevering and always being there until the series was able to stand up to the others, and maybe even exceed them, but I'm saying that. And I hope you see things the way I do. I don't really care if this gets many views or not, but as long as someone's heart, understands what I'm saying and maybe gets swayed with my opinion of Nijigasaki, maybe the journey they had, then, maybe it's not worth it. Let me make a random message about how, you can always make it in life. No matter how much you stumble, no matter how much things get delayed, you can do it. But you should never forget the people and things that helped you along the way. Embrace it. Don't brush it aside, And I was gonna end it off pretty suddenly by saying, I hope you enjoyed the video and such, but no, let's get emotional for a second. As of this entire new YouTube career I've been doing, this has been my longest script, and my longest video doesn't have any, unedited segments like the Joy cosplaying video or anything like that, so this is technically my longest video. That's kind of crazy. And I did so much research for this, for the record. I went through articles and wiki just to find Love Life lore. I even went to Amino to find some info on Love Life history, which is... Amino? I went through so many Reddit forums just to understand what Love Life fans were thinking at the time, and most importantly, I got to talk to a lot of my friends who, were Love Life fans, and so I got to learn a bunch about them and their history, along with just learning more about Love Life. So, it's a win-win, learning about your friends, learning about Love Life. Social link? So let's give thanks to them all. So here's some credits, let's make it cinematic for no particular reason, and let's use the Hasnasaur music for the background, because it's not copyrighted. Yet. I don't think so. Hit it!